So thank you as everyone gets seated. This is exciting for us to have our all-women's panel of female leaders here today. I want to thank you all for being here and being leaders in your own rights and helping advocate for more female leadership in Web3. I think for us, we have a diverse crowd today, from people who are just starting in Web3, people in Web2, and also prominent leaders who are already making strides in Web3. I think we can all agree that for Web3 to be, really pervasive, we have to make sure that everyone's included. I think female leadership is just one little part of everyone being included, including those who are underrepresented, different diverse groups. And today we want to share some stories of female leaders in their own right and see how we can move forward Web3 for everyone. So let's have everyone just introduce themselves and also tell a little story about their experience in Web3 as a woman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alyssa. I'm the founder and CEO of PANONY and PANews. We are the largest PR and marketing firm in Asia and also the largest publication of crypto news in Mandarin Chinese. And we are also active VC in the space. We have over 200 portfolio worldwide. And I have been in the Web3 space since 2017. And yeah, I think as a woman, I would like to say, to comment on the recent events about FTX and Terra Luna. I think I have always been a degen, but not degen enough to do a lot of risky moves. So we are very lucky that we dodged several bullets, while I know a lot of my friends, they actually suffer from a lot of blows from the recent accidents from the foes. Yeah, I think that's one thing I would like to comment as a female in this, in the recent events. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jolie. I'm currently a legal counsel on the product side at Coinbase, one of the most trusted exchanges out there, in case you haven't heard of us. Been at Coinbase for a couple years, and as my experience as a woman in this space is that a lot of times the dialogue, I think, could be better, especially on crypto Twitter or at conferences. A lot of times it is very male-dominated. For example, at the FTX collapse, do we really need to talk about, what kind of sex people are having? I think that's kind of besides the point. And I think sometimes without a lot of female representation, our voices get lost in the crowd.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. No? I'll just switch it. Is it not working? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm the Chief of Staff at MetaMask, also part of the ConsenSys family. I'm based in New York usually, and MetaMask is the largest cryptocurrency wallet and gateway for users into Web3. A fun fact about me is that I got my job at ETH this year. I was in conversations with the MetaMask team. Finally met them in person at ETH at the conference and got my job offer there. So for those in the audience that are looking to enter Web3 or transition into a Web3 company, conferences are great opportunities to do so.
Hey everyone, I'm Sharon. I'm the Chief of Staff at Evernew Capital. Evernew Capital is a Web3 fund focused in early stage investments and also focused in building developer communities. Prior to Evernew Capital, I was running the largest VC accelerator in New York City for the past 3 years, working with founders and investors on a daily basis. And I think currently, I guess, in terms of fun facts or something interesting, our team at Evernew, majority of our team is actually female-led. And so very excited about that. We have a ton of our team members in the audience as well, so go women.
And just to know, I remember my first conference at Avalanche. I probably could count how many women at the conference with my hands. And today I see so many amazing women in the audience, on stage, and I think that's already a great feat for Taiwan when it comes to representation. So I think now we're going to expand a little bit more of each person's experience. So with Alyssa, PANONY recently raised a Series A, and it's valued at over $100 million. What are some experiences you've encountered or you've seen when it comes to female leadership, fundraising money, especially in Web3?
Yeah, I think we have been very lucky that our fundraise was done smoothly before the market crash. And also, we are funded by our very long-term partner, like VCs we know in the space for several years. So we have a lot of track records and performance. They know well about our company and myself. So I think I was the outlier or like a lucky one, like nothing really, not really bad or nothing really like negative happened to me during like the fundraise or any obstacles. But yeah, I think as a female or like some females in the audiences, including some of my portfolio, they probably encountered something that when they were talking to like a male VCs or whatsoever, you're not sure if he's asking you out or he's actually interested in the project. I think that's what a lot of us don't talk about, but that actually happens a lot. So I think, yeah, just tips for female founders who want to raise. I think just know to set the boundaries and protect yourself, and yeah, just set a boundary clear so you can cut off the ones who are not actually interested in your project but only in you. Yeah.
Interesting. Sharon, curious, since you're a part of the VC world, does that happen a lot? And do you guys try to kind of discourage that from happening when you talk to female founders or are trying to raise for women?
I think we obviously always encourage kind of female founders, at least in our portfolios, to speak with one another. And I think what VCs can do to help with that, I think probably exactly like what you mentioned, Alyssa, in terms of like giving them advice, or even before they meet with the VCs or the other partners, providing them with some context of like how this person is, and doing some DD for these founders, right? For these founders, exactly. So telling them a little bit more about these different VCs, how they interact with founders, how they typically have conversations, to be able to help them weed out the folks that are not so serious about actually providing support and funding.
Awesome. And then in terms of communication, as a woman, I would like to go to Jolie. She is the senior product counsel at Coinbase, and lawyers are typically very type A in general. And then as a woman and as women in leadership positions, often we have to skirt between the boundaries of being assertive and confident versus being a little bit bossy. Does that happen in your work, in your line of work, and how do you kind of adjust to communicate with your counterparts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that happens a lot. I often think, am I coming off too strongly? Am I using too many likes in my speech? And at the end of the day, I think what I tell myself is just embrace it and be a little bit bossy, and say what you think and say it with confidence. And one thing that I think is really important is always make sure your value. So my value to the company and to the product engineers that I work with is my legal skills and my ability to reason through exactly what kind of regulatory frameworks apply to a specific product. And that's what I focus on. If there is something that I disagree with, I always think to myself, I should respond with yes, but. And so that puts a lot of people in kind of at ease, because you're not trying to be combative. You're trying to be cooperative, trying to work with the person that you are advising by saying, yes, that is an idea, but here are some considerations to think through and whether you want to take that risk.
Awesome. And then we have two chief of staffs here dealing with communication from people all over the world. I think this is a question for you two to begin with, but also I would like to extend it to the rest of the panelists. Are there differences in communication between female leadership in the East and West? Or in just communication in general, the differences you see communicating with different partners or people in your meetings?
Okay, sure. So going off of Jolie's point around knowing your value, really standing ground on your value proposition and what you bring. one trend that I've noticed between West and East is, so when I first started at MetaMask, within the first 2 weeks, I was encouraged to set up one-on-ones with our CEO and each member of our C-level board executive team. And when I mentioned that to some of my colleagues that are based in Hong Kong or just based in Asia, they did mention that was a bit like unusual, or that was something that wasn't as, like, I guess, proactively encouraged. So in terms of communication, that was one trend that I've noticed that potentially is different in Western culture versus Eastern culture. I don't know if you have thoughts to add there.
Yeah, I think there's probably something else as well, and this is not just, I think, within Web3, but outside of Web3. I think that, because I'm born and raised in Taiwan, so like grew up here, my parents are Taiwanese, and so when I first moved to the US for work, right, there is, in terms of, let's talk about like salary negotiation, right? I think that's always like a touchy subject when it comes to kind of female within the tech space. And I think that, you know, on the Western side of the culture, there's this you could feel very confident about yourself and know that, you know, if I'm doing the work and I deserve a higher salary, I feel comfortable enough to just go for it. Versus, I think in Asia, you're kind of culturally growing up, you're like trained to be more like reserved and to wait till your boss is like, okay, year end, time for your 10% like increase. So I think that something that I really kind of saw the difference in between was that for women to at least feel confident enough to go to their boss at the right time and be like, hey, you know, these are the things we talked about. These are the goals in the company. We've hit X, Y, and Z, and provide some proof points of like why I think there should be an increase in my salary and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to add on to that. I mean, just be comfortable pushing your boundaries. I think one of the things that I've learned, doing salary negotiations is that being uncomfortable is good. It's good. Because oftentimes I think we've learned to accept, especially in Eastern culture as well, that, you know, we're grateful to have a job. We're grateful to be at a tech company. But in reality, you know, there's a pay disparity between men and women, and we need to be a little bit aggressive and think about what do we need to do in order to shorten in the gap. And I will say that, you know, from experience, like women who have asked, who talk openly about pay and salary, have been able to argue for sign-on bonuses or retention bonuses that a lot of my male counterparts often get, and I see my female counterparts not asking for it, and they don't get it. And so I highly encourage to be open about this with your other female coworkers.
I think the only thing I would add is the thing that everyone says, the worst thing you get is just a no, right? Like, I think that's the worst thing, right? Obviously, I think you need to do your homework. You need to, if there's other female leaders that you work with closely, it's always good to get their opinions on how to approach, what's the timing like, how are the finances within the company doing, does it make sense for you to ask for this now? Also for compensation, just going into compensation, because I'm very passionate about it. It's not just right about the salary, right? You could always negotiate for example, more paid time off, or you could negotiate for some learning and development. It doesn't always have to be the salary amount, so it's good to be flexible as well and just kind of be open-minded. But I would always suggest you talk to other folks within the space. Communities for women are really important.
That's great. Well, segueing into that, I think a lot of it is there are a lot of women who are in companies, but they don't know how to ask for mentorship. So how do you guys recommend or have any tips on someone who's starting out? How do they ask their female counterparts or female leaders to be a mentor, or to have you guys, you know, help them in their journey as they advance in their career?
Yeah, maybe I can take that first. I think actually it also kind of ties to the previous question about communication. I think actually females are more willing to communicate and help each other, especially when the Web3 space is so tiny and so small, and we only have like probably, there's a lot of events that I go, I'm kind of like the only female at an event. So I'm very happy to, if anyone can ask me for advice or mentorship or anything. Like generally, I just want to also help a lot of females to join the space. I think everyone will be happy to see that because we bring kind of different strengths in the space. We have different specialties, and of course, we are like top of the game as well. So I think just reach out. I'm pretty sure like maybe 99% of the female would be happy to help each other. Yeah.
Anyone have?
So my strategy, I think this kind of applies to both men and women, is that you want to find the person that you really jive with. Some of my best mentors and advocates within the company have been male, and my strategy has always been meet as many people as you can. We're a fully remote company, and so I like to set up one-on-ones with various people. The people that I click with, I set on quarterly one-on-ones or monthly one-on-ones. And this is just ways for you to kind of get information about what is going around the company, who is doing what kind of projects, who can really advocate and push for you. And I will say some of my best advocate at Coinbase are actually engineers that I work with and who are male, and they really help make a case for me to be on their projects or to move forward within the company to make sure that I stay there and that I'm happy.
Oh, I think that's great too. Before we continue, also like maybe talk about tips where men in this room can really be allies to women in your companies.
Yeah, going off of that point, I do want to make a small nuanced distinction between a mentor and a sponsor. And I think that's really where men can come in as allies. So before MetaMask, I was at Google, and we were really encouraged to build up both mentors and sponsors. Mentors are those that you develop a relationship with, and it's part of your career development. Whereas sponsors, they may not necessarily be involved with coaching and your development, but they're the ones in the room when you're not in there vouching on behalf of you. Kind of like what Jolie mentioned, like they're advocating for you because they know you do great work. So as men in the space, I think what could be really valuable is being very mindful of the women in those spaces. When you are in meetings, asking and being mindful of what that gender breakdown looks like, asking the questions around like, do we have the sufficient diverse voices in the room? And I would ask everyone in this room to think through those type of questions when you're in meetings, when you're in boardrooms, when you're also at conferences as well.
I guess the only last thing I would add around mentorship is that I think a good way to think about it too is kind of thinking through what you want to achieve and what your goals are in terms of career growth, and looking for someone that you really look up to, or it doesn't have to just be female, even though sometimes it's really helpful for female mentors to be able to help you navigate through the career paths, but looking for someone in a position where you see yourself in 5 years, right? And kind of asking them how they got there, what were the hurdles that they had to go through, or what were some learnings along the way. That's like a really easy way to start a conversation, just trying to get to know them basically. Like just becoming their friend, understanding like what they do, how they do it, and then like having those back and forth conversations would become easier.
Yeah, and then throughout this journey, I think after hearing a lot of stories about women in leadership, I think the next thing I would like to talk about is, say that you are inspired by a lot of women and you want to fund your own, have a startup or start something of your own. Like, do you guys have tips on female leadership for women who are thinking about starting their own business or who are trying to go on that path of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, to me, I always encourage people to just do it like immediately. But it also tied to my personality. I'm always very rushy and just jump into whatever I don't understand. But I don't care. Just do it because that's what men do, right? I think a lot of female friends of mine, they have a lot of great business ideas, but they always spend kind of way too much time to polish their idea, to spend too much time doing research, or to spend too much time doing like planning. Yeah, I don't know who in the audience is here were also in Singapore, but Singapore, the token 2049 was just 3 months ago. And in these 3 months, FTX died, BlockFi died, like tens of companies died. So if you want to spend like 2-3 months to hesitate about if you want to do it, then don't do it. like you either do it now or just, don't wait out. Yeah.
Curious about, now that Jolie is answering, what is like the break between risk versus like doing it, right? Because I feel like you're a legal counsel. What would your advice be for women who want to start?
Embrace uncomfortability and the unknown, and embrace failure, because I think we all have failed in more than once in our lives. And I think especially for women, we've been through so much already. Just walking down the street in New York City, or being passed up by promotions, and we always find one way or the other to support each other. And I think that mentality of just pushing through, bring that into your business and whatever your startup idea, and just reach out to every contact that you have. Don't fear. You never know when one person's going to make that one connection to another person that's going to make or break it for you.
Yeah, and I would recommend expanding your network outside of not only your company, your communities, but also engaging with other communities as well. So, for example, right now I started a Web3 Chief of Staff community, and that's a way for me to get a pulse on not what's only happening within MetaMask, but also what's happening across the Web3 ecosystem, and I get to chat with other Chief of Staffs that are going through similar issues, but in a different flavor. So I would recommend engaging with different communities across the space.
Yeah, that's actually how I met Michelle, was through a Chief of Staff dinner. I'm really glad I did. But yeah, I 100% agree with what everyone's saying here. I think that the thing I would add would be that I think that it's important for us to not only kind of meet folks outside of your own network to learn more, but at the same time, when you do get to a position of mentorship or being able to kind of advise and help others to be doing the same, right? So when you're seeing that someone is interested in Web3, kind of like what Alyssa does, she starts educating them, bringing them into different groups and helping them to meet different people. I think we need to advocate for each other and make it's a competitive space, but I do think that it's important for everyone to encourage everyone when we are doing well, to be able to just bring the morale up and just execute.
And one thing I kind of want to add in there is, especially for all the our male counterparts, like please, bring other women that you see in conferences along. I think more than once when I've gone to conferences, I feel very alone there, and I have gotten comments as to, well, I'm standoffish. I'm like there with like a very cold posture, but that's frankly because I feel very overwhelmed to be in a room full of men sometimes, and you never know when, just someone being kind and just bring another person into the conversation can really help open up somebody and just really create really meaningful connections.
Yeah, and with that, do we have any tips for women who are just starting in Web3? Maybe many of you here are here for the first time and you're trying to explore what Web3 is like. How do you enter this space and find other women, and maybe some other groups that you know in Web3 that you guys have joined while you're in Web3?
Yeah, so my company is over 80% is like female. So we have like about 45 people, and 80 is like female. So we are like a female team, and all my co-founders are female as well. So yeah, we're happy to give advices or onboard anyone who wants to join the space, reach out to us. And also I think there's a lot of like online platform that's like female centric. So for example, there's like a Web3 VC Airtable, like you can reach out to a lot of Web3 female VCs, and there's also different group chats on Discord or on Telegram, and there's also like female dedicated VC. They only invest in female founders. So I think those are the good ways to start reaching out, and I think you don't really have to wait until you start racing to reach out to those people. It's good to just build a connection, to know someone, to mingle, and maybe kind of validate your idea with your friends and people you know, and always ask for intros. I think people are generally nice, like girls will definitely intro other girls to you, and guys are always willing to intro you. to someone else. So like, why not? Like, there's no way someone say no to us, right? So just ask for intros. Yeah.
Mine would be probably crypto Twitter. I know that a lot of people both love and hate it, and I think crypto Twitter is honestly really amazing. I got to meet a lot of people. I randomly DM folks online, and I also, joined this Women in Web3 article club, and you just get to meet other people, and people are really open on crypto Twitter. I just don't go to the weird ones, but most of the people are pretty open.
Who are the weird ones?
Sometimes go really random rabbit holes, but I think that's a really great way to also meet other Web3 people and just learn with them.
So if you want crypto Twitter recommendations, follow up with Jolie afterwards. So for me, sometimes at conferences, it also is lonely for me being like, sometimes it's like 10% women. So I've really leveraged a lot of women in Web3 networks and communities. And what's really nice is that at conferences, oftentimes these communities will host events where you can meet other women in the space that might make someone feel more comfortable, especially if you're new and entering. So some of my favorite are Boys Club, Surge. There's My BFF. So I'm happy to share more, but those are some of my favorite ones.
I feel like you guys all covered everything, so I was just gonna add Boys Club is a really great one for anyone who wants to be introduced to crypto. They have a lot of like introductory videos for folks to join, but I think you guys said it all.
Yeah, and two of my recommendations for female developers, there's like Her DAO, Blue DAO, where they always host different female-led developer conferences as adjacent events at conferences. So feel free to go look those up, and I'm sure there's a lot of welcoming women to invite you into those groups, and hopefully we'll have more of those conferences in Asia and in Taiwan. So I think we have a few minutes left. So my last closing question is, what's one practical tip you have for women who are hesitant about taking on a leadership role and if they're currently facing obstacles in the workplace?
I have this conversation to some of my friends last few days that I think, not just I think, but research has it like a lot of females have imposter syndrome. And one example LinkedIn gap like long time ago was like if the job description lists as 5 years experience, a guy with 3 years will apply, but a girl will have to be like 5 years for them to feel comfortable to apply. So I think the first, I think a lot of being the startup founders, a lot is like a mental game. Like your mentality has to be very strong. You have to put yourself in the right position, and you have to, trust yourself and not so much self-doubt. I think that's what to begin with, because if you can't overcome that, it just gets like harder and harder after. Yeah.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. I think one thing that I've learned this year actually is to not be afraid to take risks, especially to dive into something that nobody wants to do and is super complicated, and there has a high chance of failure. I think those are opportunities that women can take. Raise your hand, ask if you can dive into that project and lead, because if you succeed, you'll really shine.
And going off of that point around taking risks, I would also recommend being okay asking for help. I think sometimes when we're facing new opportunities and issues, there might be a tendency to maybe not ask for help or to be scared or embarrassed. I would recommend reaching out to those that you can trust, probably in your communities, whether it's for female communities or females within your region, and asking for help there and slowly building that confidence up.
Again, amazing points. Everyone says everything. I think the only thing I would add is just the worst that can happen is a no. And so I do think that it never hurts to try. I would say that everyone sees like everyone on stage and everyone's like, oh, they're so confident. It's like I definitely dealt with imposter syndrome myself, and I'm sure many of you guys probably have as well. And so I think it's feel comfortable to like talk to other people about it, because I do think you'll realize that there's actually more people going through like what you're going. This sounds like it's becoming like a therapy session, but just life in general. Like it's good to talk to other people about things that you're struggling with, like asking questions, but also, just thinking about, how you can advance yourself and asking the right questions and being able to push yourself further.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for such an insightful panel. And I hope you guys really enjoy this talk. And feel free to come talk to us after this conference. We really want to meet you guys and see what we can do together in this space. So one photo together, and then in the next panel.
Wait, which camera? Okay.
Never been on stage.
Only at women panels do we have to make sure we have perfect photos.
Dude, there's like 4 guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the speakers, for sharing their stories.